It wasn't super cold, but it was in December. And here's the story of the moment I knew that Kirby Smart was deadly serious about football at Georgia. So, in his introductory press conference, there was a reporter from the Red and Black who asked him which part of the program which part of Georgia's program he would be most, paying attention to. Would it be the offense or the defense? And he said, I'm going to be paying attention to all of it. And paying attention is probably the wrong quote, but at that second, it was obvious that the detail obsessive Kirby Smart was in Athens. Now, it took some time from that moment on. It took that was early December 2015, and by early December 2017, they won the Southeastern Conference Football Championship for the first time since 2005. So it took 2 years almost exactly for every single thing to come to fruition. But it was at that moment, there were two moments in that press conference when it occurred to me that he was that this was going to work. Number one was when he answered the young man from the Red and Black. I think it was a guy. And then secondly, and this is what I was thinking about yesterday when I was kind of putting all this together. When he started talking about the offensive and defensive line, they weren't near where they needed to be at the time. They just weren't, and they weren't big enough. And for what Georgia was trying to do in the future, they certainly weren't big enough. Now Georgia's been a little different in the way that it's attacked people. In 17 and 18, they really mashed people. I mean, they would just go straight ahead, basically. That's what they would do. But as time went on, the way that they have attacked under Todd Monken, and probably the way that they'll attack under Mike Bobo, it's not necessarily going to be that. Well, it wasn't at all that style with Todd Monken. It's not going to be that style with Mike either. This just sort of get in a phone booth and bury you. No, that's not going to happen. Hey, real quick, I've got these Stetson Bennett signed double dogs. If you want one, you better act now because what was it? 20% of what I've got is gone, and that was in 2 days. So not even 2 days, actually one full day. So uh, you've been warned. I do not have that many of them. But again, it's a Stetson Bennett signed double dogs. So the link for that's down below. But when Kirby started talking about the offensive defensive line not being where they needed to be, uh, that didn't get a cheer from the crowd. I don't know why crowds cheer at press conferences. I don't know. But that was the sort of, in terms of the meat and potatoes of the thing, that's where it was evident and obvious that Georgia was going in a direction that was going to be very different than in the past. When you talk about John Theus, Brendan Cublano, uh, Greg Pike, David Andrews, these guys are not bad offensive linemen. They're a different type of offensive lineman. I don't need, Cublano chasing me down and beating me up for all these comments, which he's not going to do. But anyway, those guys were get on the perimeter, move. The style that they were playing was different than the style that Kirby wanted to play moving forward. He wanted to mash you moving forward all of the time. That's not what those guys were. And that's okay. That's okay. You can run the ball in a lot of different ways. The way Kirby wanted to do it, and it was fortunate for Jake Fromm that first year in 17 that they did, he wanted to punch people straight up in the face. They wanted to gash you in the middle. And of course, they were going to get to the outside. But those two things were really where, Kirby and Georgia, things changed. Things changed. Hey, we're getting these sort of this comment and stuff like this. This is thanks to the folks at DoorDash. We can't do it without our sponsors. Get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to $20 value when you use the code DAWG at press conference. At checkout, easy enough for me to say. Limited time offer, terms apply. It's 50% off a $20 value, $0 in delivery fee when you order with your first order when you download the DoorDash app. So 50% off. The code's DAWG, DAWG. That link is down below too. And if you've not used DoorDash, it really is. It's very convenient. Let me put it to you that way. What we saw right after that was Kirby and them going hard on offensive linemen. Okay, we're talking Sam Pittman going for Andrew Thomas, Jamari, just people that would change the way that things worked. Big players. I think Ben Cleveland was a Sam Pittman guy. And in the case of Jamari and Ben, frankly, it took some time. I mean, Jamari was a very good prospect coming out of college. He has turned out in his first year in the NFL to have been a sleeper NFL prospect. Anyone who watched him play at pace would have been surprised that he didn't go higher. You had guys like Justin Schaefer, I believe, was also a Sam Pittman. Now, Justin was a little bit different. Justin would not have been. Justin would be a guy that Mark and them would have recruited pretty hard, I think. But and Ben and Andrew too. The difference has been though that in the current iteration of Georgia offensive linemen, they've gotten those guys. They've not let Laramie Tunsil get away. They have signed players who went on to be drafted. Not just drafted, but drafted in the first round. That's the offensive lineman. On the defensive line, it was a total, they had a defensive line. They had playmakers. They did not have Jalen Carter. They didn't have guys like this, okay? And these guys weren't from Georgia necessarily. Jalen, Jordan Davis, those guys really set the defensive line for a while. They had playmakers like Lorenzo, Jonathan Ledbetter, but they are at a whole different level on this defensive line now. I mean, the Zion Logues of the world. Zion Logue's job is not necessarily to make tackles. Zion Logue's job is to allow other people to make tackles, and that's not the same thing. Those are not the same thing at all. Trent Thompson was a guy that Mark and them signed. Um, it was a big deal, and he started coming into his own uh, the end of the first year with Kirby. um, but this defensive line now, compared to what it has been in the past, it's just hard to deal with, man. I mean, you talk about Brinson and Stackhouse, Logue, um, Ingram Dawkins, Williams, Bear Alexander. Uh, you know, they just have a lot of players. They have a lot of players. And on the offensive line, Truss is huge. Excuse me, Mims and Truss are huge. Routledge is not small. Routledge is a guy that the previous staff would not have signed Tate Routledge. That would not have happened. Now I know we're talking about almost 10 years ago now, but that's what changed. That's what got serious at Georgia. The change there was that this group um, was going to come in, and they knew what some of us were saying at the time, which is the talent level is not where it needs to be. And where Kirby acutely pointed to was on the lines. Because sort of why does it take so long to beat South Carolina? Okay, let's just take that as an example. And Kirby Smart's lost to South Carolina in a sort of inexplicable game. But why does it take so long to beat South Carolina when you're Mark Richt? I mean, when you think about uh, particularly like the 2014 game in particular stands out. That was not a good South Carolina team. That was a South Carolina team that was just not great. Okay, that was not Jadeveon Clowney and those guys. They were gone. Some of those guys were still sprinkled around, but they didn't have the closeout guys on the big men. I don't think. Um, they have that now. And when you look back, there's two things happening at once. First of all, Carolina not under Steve Spurrier was not the same as Carolina under Steve Spurrier. And Mark dealt with two, I would say, legendary coaches, one way better than the other, Spurrier way better than Lou Holtz. But South Carolina was not the same after Spurrier as it was with him. I mean, Will did a pretty good job in 16 and 17, and then it just stopped. In terms of Mark, though, Mark dealt with Spurrier from '05 until 14. So the bulk of his time at Georgia, Mark was dealing with Steve Spurrier in his division. Okay. When Steve got players, man, it was tough. So, but I would contend that the players were not, the difference between the players was not as significant as it is now. South Carolina simply does not have the type of player that Georgia does. They don't. They're not there. Not in terms of, you know, multiple players. No, it's not there. And you saw that in Columbia this year. You saw that in Athens last year. I mean, Carolina kind of fought Georgia and they lost 40-13 or whatever it was. They lost this year 49-10, 40, whatever. I mean, these games are not close. And it goes back to that moment when Kirby started talking about, hey, you know, this program is going to address the issues we have. And the issues we have right now, we don't have the lines we need. That was a seminal moment to me. That's when you could tell it was serious for the Dogs with Kirby Smart.